Ever since I was a little girl, all I wanted to draw and paint were women. So that's a fascination that I've had from an early age and something that has really been consistent in my work as an artist. The exhibition is called Women's Work, and I guess the title is kind of self-explanatory. It brings together examples of paintings from several series of work that I've made over the past 5 years, which are all within this broader theme of looking at the work that women do. This subject really started for me in 2016 with a series about nail bars in London. I'd noticed on my bus journey to and from the studio every day that there were suddenly all these nail bars had popped up on the route. Staring out of the bus window, gawping into these shops, kind of fascinated by what was going on. They were such female-dominated spaces, and I decided I wanted to make some work about them. The nail bar paintings then led on to a broader series of glimpsed scenes of women at work. This series of works was much more voyeuristic, and that was quite intentional, that the women would be unaware of me watching them. And that device of looking in through a window is something that appears in a lot of my work. My process always starts with my own photography, and in the case with a lot of the paintings that are in the exhibition, this is as a result of having spent time shadowing women at work. So I might have, well, you can see sort of hundreds of photos from one session, and there'll be lots of things that are very similar. And then back in the studio I start working with these and making a lot of drawings. To begin with, like pencil drawings, just working out what's interesting. And then I move on to oil sketches, which are really quite intuitive for me in terms of the way I'm thinking about using colour. And these are where I'm starting to interpret the photographs into a language of painting. Yeah, so that's so that one's going to be like 215 by 165. I think that it's important to me that the work is paintings and it's not these photographs that I take because, well, for a start, I think the paintings are much more interesting. But there's also something in the paintings which becomes a mixture of this documentary material that I have in the photographs, but is also about my own experience and memory of spending time with these women. Getting things like a straight line right is actually really important for the work. And I want it to look like a space that is believable, like somewhere you could just walk into. This idea of public space and private space is quite prevalent in my work, and it's something that I'm always thinking about in terms of the gaze and where the viewer is and who's doing the looking. One of the things that came up while I was making this work was really thinking about what work it is that women do. In the essay in the catalogue that accompanies the exhibition, Tracy Warren talks about the 5 C's of women's work. So cleaning, catering, cashiering, clerical and caring. The one of these that really caught my interest was cleaning. And that's led on to me making a series of work that really focuses on that subject. I got the chance to shadow some women working at a couple of hotels in London. One thing that really struck me about this work was how repetitive it was, from the actions that they were repeating over and over again, cleaning every room, but also the environment itself. So like endless corridors of identical doors with identical rooms behind them. So I spent a lot of time thinking about the fact that these women were probably they were spending all day cleaning these hotel rooms, and then they were probably going home and cleaning their own houses. But I was thinking also about maintenance of the home, the domestic, so not just paid labour of women, but unpaid labour. And that led me on to making a series of paintings about my mum working in the home. When I was making the housekeeping paintings in 2018, I was talking to my mum about them and talking about this job of cleaning. And she reminded me that her mum, my granny, and her mum before her had been cleaners. And I think it was just thinking a bit about how through sort of social mobility and education, my mum hadn't ended up cleaning anybody else's house for money. I think my mum would be the first to recognise that she was in a very privileged position to have that choice, not to go back to work once she had children. And for a lot of the women that I've painted, you know, they're not necessarily choosing these jobs that they do. It's about what education and opportunity is open to them. The other side of this subject of women's work is me looking at women that are moving into professions that have been historically much more male-dominated. Spending time with women working in the Savile Row Tailors was really fascinating, particularly finding out about the history of that profession and how difficult it's been for women to move into it. One of the things that I was really thinking about when I was deciding on the composition for this particular work was to include this rail of suits on the right-hand side and these two headless mannequins. Thinking about these women in this very masculine context, both in respect to the clothing that they're making, it's all men's suits, but also this environment as being very male-dominated historically. The paintings aren't just about documenting the unseen, but also about trying to give voice and agency to those women through the process. Having the opportunity to stage this exhibition now, a year later than planned, means that in some ways it's actually become more of a celebration of this work that we all recognise much more now, this unseen women's work.